Okay guys, I'm going to walk you through how to write up a purchase contract and just the most important parts of the purchase contract that you need to be aware of when you're writing up an offer on a property. I'm going to go through in detail each section in a separate video or multiple separate videos, but for this one, all we're going to do is just the most important parts of a purchase contract and what you really need to be aware of, making sure you fill out, and maybe some tips and tricks along the way. So first thing I did here in Transaction Desk is I made a fake transaction. I got Johnny Test here, and what I did was I picked a property in Paragon, this 222 Martel Place, listed for 1.1 million, and what we're going to do is we're going to write a pretend offer on this property. So Johnny Test is my buyer, so I put him in, and what I also did was I added in the address of the property that we're writing on and put purchase. That's good for the conveyancing to be able to find the property and the deal if the address is in the actual name portion of the transaction. So that'd be a good habit to get into. So I've already done a lot of this here just to kind of make things go a little bit smoother. I've added in my purchase contract here, which I'm going to go into. So as you can see, when this loads up, I have already filled out quite a bit of this. So just to kind of show you some of the portions of it that are important, you want to put in a contract number right at the beginning. I usually do the first and last initial of my clients and then just a few random numbers, just to make sure that the contract number is very isolated and not the same as any other contract. It auto-populates the seller's name and the address and lot block and plan and a few of these items if you put in the MLS number when you're setting up your transaction. So when you're setting up your transaction as a buyer, it'll give you an option to pick your local board, and then you can pick Edmonton, and then you can put in the MLS number of the property, which you would find right here. And you could either copy and paste that or just type it in, and then all this stuff will populate for you. Okay, so 1.1b, the unattached goods or chattels of the property, would be in the list in the highlight sheet under goods included. Now, one quick way that you can get these in there is you can just go like this, and you can copy and paste these in. And that gives you a quick way to get your chattels into the contract without having to type them out. So a little bit of a hack there. If you need to add anything else, you can obviously type that in right there, whether it be bar stools or whatever else the buyer wants to throw in there, but this is just a quick way to get the goods that are already included into the contract. So the next portion here would be your purchase price. I just picked a random number, so we did $985 as a starting point purchase price. But this is where you would add this into your contract. Your 2.3 section here is your possession date. So I put April 27th as a possession date, so that's the day that the buyers would take possession of the new property and title would get transferred. This section down here is just basically explaining whose brokerage is taking care of the conveyancing. Usually it's the seller's brokerage, so you have a little menu here. You can pick sellers or buyers, but generally it's the seller's brokerage that does the conveyancing on deals. Section 4, this is deposits. 4.2 is the brokerage that's holding the deposit in trust. Again, that is often the seller's brokerage. So if you go to the highlight sheet on the bottom here, you can see Nina's brokerage, she's a listing agent, is Maxwell Challenge. So you're going to put Maxwell Challenge in this portion because that's who's going to be holding the deposit in trust. This 4.3 is the amount of the deposit and also what method of payment. So for this example, it's a bank draft. It could also be an e-transfer or whatever they decide to do. And this is important. This is the date of when the deposit needs to be into the brokerage for. So this deposit needs to be delivered to Maxwell Challenge on this date or before. If it's not delivered till after this date and you don't get a late deposit signed, by the sellers, then the sellers can actually forfeit the deal. Scrolling down, 7.1 is the dower section. If that's applicable for this deal, then you will need to put it in. You'll find out from the seller's agent. And 8 is conditions. So 8.2, very important portion of the contract. The conditions are what the contract will be hinging on. This is the buyers doing their due diligence for the property before they actually purchase it. With this section, we're just going to do financing and home inspection for right now. If you see this little calendar right here, you can actually pick a date for when it is. I've already put this in. This will not auto-populate for you, you need to put it in yourself. So I put 9 p.m. You can do AM or PM. So my condition day right now is March 22nd, 9 p.m. for financing, and I can do the same for the property inspection condition. So both conditions, March 22nd, 9 p.m. So this is the sale of buyer's home property condition. If you do end up having to have a sale of buyer's home condition on the contract, you will need to add a schedule, which gets checked off right here. But if you don't have a sale of buyer's home, then you don't need to worry about that. Additional buyer's conditions and seller's conditions are here. Terms are kind of important. They are not hinging the contract like a condition is, but a term would be something that the buyer might want from the seller in a transaction that might have to get done prior to possession date. Like, for example, if something needs to get fixed, or if, let's say, there was a bunch of garbage or something like that in the backyard, then you would write, the seller is to remove all the garbage from the backyard prior to possession in this section here with proof provided. And you can say that there would be a holdback of, let's say, $500 to $1,000 that the lawyers would be holding back if that proof did not come through. So that's your only legal recourse. You need a holdback when you have a term in a contract. Otherwise, the buyer won't have any legal recourse to go back to the seller on it. So scrolling down a little bit further, this usually auto-populates when you put in the MLS number. It should give all the seller's brokerage and seller's brokerage representative name, and same with the buyers. This should all get filled in automatically, but this is important. You need to have this in the contract as well. Scrolling down a little bit further, now you have your offer portion of the contract. 17.2 is where you would write when your contract is open to acceptance until. If your buyers decide to have a deadline on the contract, then you would add that in here. Same thing, there's a little menu, you pick your date, that's when it would come in. So March 10th would be when this offer is open for acceptance until. And then you can just put the city or wherever they're from in this section here. The rest of this would all get filled out in AuthentiSign once you're done with the contract, which I think we are at this point. There's nothing else that we would need to fill out. That's all the important parts. So now the next step after this, once the contract is all filled out, is to send to AuthentiSign, and I'm going to do that in a separate video.